I remember the moment everything shifted. Our anniversary dinner should have been perfect, just me and Tyler, celebrating everything we'd built together. But when I took that first bite of the salmon, something went horribly wrong. My stomach lurched, and a wave of nausea hit me so fast I barely had time to react. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. My vision blurred. Tyler's face, once full of affection, was now unreadable. He sat there, his eyes flicking nervously between me and the table, like I wasn't the woman he'd promised to love forever. I was confused. Was this food poisoning? Was it something I ate? But something deep inside me whispered it wasn't that simple. And when I collapsed onto the table, gasping for air, I realized this wasn't a coincidence. Tyler wasn't worried. He was waiting. I woke up in a hospital room hours later, my body weak, my mind racing. The doctor said it wasn't food poisoning at all. There had been poison in my system, just enough to kill me if I hadn't gotten medical attention in time. But here's the kicker. The more I learned, the more I realized this wasn't just about me getting sick. This was about Tyler, my husband, the man I trusted most in this world, betraying me in the most unimaginable way. And when I woke up, it wasn't just my life at risk. It was my heart, my future, my everything. And just when I thought I had it figured out, I uncovered something even darker. Tyler and his secret lover had been plotting against me for months to cash in on my life insurance and start fresh without me. But here's the thing they didn't know. I survived, and now I was ready to expose them all. What I didn't know was just how far Tyler was willing to go to finish what he started. I used to believe that Tyler was my safe place. We met in our 20s, both new to the city, both looking for someone to ground us. He had this easy charm, this ability to make you feel like the most important person in the room. And when we got married, I thought this was it. I had my person. The one I could count on through everything. Good times, bad times, all of it. It felt like we were a team, built to last. Our life together wasn't perfect. No relationship is. But we made it work. We had our little traditions, like anniversary dinners, just the two of us to celebrate the years. Tyler always made a point to remind me how special I was to him, how he couldn't imagine life without me. He'd surprise me with flowers on random Tuesdays, leave notes for me on the bathroom mirror when he thought I was stressed. I remember thinking I was the luckiest woman in the world. We had a little house in the suburbs of Texas, just outside of Austin. Nothing too flashy, but it was ours. I liked the way the light filtered through the kitchen windows in the mornings, the quiet hum out the neighborhood. Our neighbors were friendly, and life felt stable, predictable. There were never any major surprises. Until that night. I wasn't the type to expect the worst. I trusted people. And I trusted Tyler. Sure, I had a few moments where I wondered about the long hours he worked, or when he'd come home late with that odd look in his eyes, but I dismissed them. He always had a reasonable explanation. Work stress, a business trip, too much to do. I'd wave away the unease in my gut. But lately, something was different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was a change in the air. Tyler had been more distant. He'd smile at me, sure, but it wasn't the same. We'd sit in silence sometimes, like he wasn't fully there. I'd catch him staring off into space, his phone hidden just a little too carefully. I'd ask if everything was okay, and he'd reassure me with that same smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then came the anniversary dinner. The one where everything started to unravel. I could have never predicted that night would change my life forever. But if I'm being honest,
Part of me knew something was coming. I just didn't know it would be this.
Tyler and I met in the most random of ways. I'd just moved to Austin, desperate to start fresh after a messy breakup back home in Dallas. I'd thrown myself into my job, but life in a new city was tough. Lonely, really. That was until Tyler walked into my life like he'd been sent to pull me out of the fog. He was charming in a way that felt effortless. We met at a coffee shop near the University of Texas, both reaching for the last cinnamon roll at the same time. His laugh when I joked about it was the kind of sound that made you feel warm. We exchanged numbers that afternoon, and I remember feeling something inside me spark, a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. Maybe it was hope. Our first date was at a local diner. Nothing fancy, but it felt like everything to me. He listened when I spoke, really listened. And when I talked about my past, he didn't judge. He just nodded, his eyes always soft, always encouraging. By the time we finished dinner, I knew he was different from anyone I'd ever met. The chemistry was undeniable. And from that moment, everything just seemed to fall into place. It wasn't long before we were inseparable. I'd spend weekends at his apartment, and we'd cook together, sometimes not even saying much, just being in the same space. We'd drive around the city at night with no particular destination, the radio playing softly in the background, feeling like we were the only two people who mattered. It was simple. It was perfect. We moved in together after only 6 months. It felt right. He was my rock, my safe place. We talk about the future often, kids, careers, a house one day. He made promises to always have my back, to always be there. I believed him, every word. Tyler was the kind of guy who made you feel like you could conquer anything together. By the time we got married, a year later, I thought I knew everything about him. I loved him completely. I didn't just trust him, I believed in him. He was my person, my partner. I remember our wedding day like it was yesterday. The way he looked at me as I walked down the aisle, the softness in his eyes, the way he whispered, "I love you," as we exchanged vows. And for a while, I thought that was enough. That love, those vows, the life we'd built, I thought we had everything. But sometimes things aren't what they seem. Sometimes the cracks are there, but you don't see them until they're big enough to ignore. It was on that anniversary night that I realized for the first time I didn't know Tyler as well as I thought. And that scared me more than anything. Looking back, I see the signs now. The things I brushed off or excused. It wasn't one big moment that made me question Tyler. It was the small things, the inconsistencies that I didn't want to admit were adding up. It started subtly. Tyler had always been someone who'd drop everything for me. He'd take care of things around the house, show up with dinner after a long day, and always make me feel like a priority. But for the past few months, something had shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was this distance. He'd come home late more often. He'd leave the house early on weekends, saying he had work to catch up on or a meeting with a client, but I'd never see any evidence of it. No phone calls, no paperwork, no emails, nothing. I'd try to reach out, but he'd always be distracted or too busy. I'd ask about his day, and he'd brush it off with a quick, "Same old, babe." Something didn't sit right. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something from me, but what? I remember one evening when he came home late. Again. I'd been sitting on the couch, waiting for him, scrolling through my phone. His key turned in the door, and I looked up, expecting the usual, "Hey, how was your day?" or at least a kiss. But instead, he just walked in, didn't even look at me, and went straight to the kitchen, like he was trying to avoid my gaze. I asked him what was wrong, and he just snapped, "I'm fine, just tired." But his tone didn't match his words. His eyes were darting around, like he was thinking of something else entirely. The next day, I found a small slip of paper in his jacket pocket, something I'd never seen before. It was a receipt for a hotel in San Antonio. I asked him about it, but his face went pale, and he laughed it off, saying it was a mistake, that it was just a business trip he forgot to tell me about. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't ignore the unease creeping in. The cracks were starting to show, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. He's been stressed lately, I thought. Maybe he just needs space. I wanted to trust him. I did trust him, but that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. It got worse when I noticed that he'd been spending more time on his phone. His texts were always quick, but they seemed a little too quick, and he'd always step into the other room to take calls. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, I snuck into his office when he was in the shower, and I searched through his drawers. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to know. I rifled through papers, folders, nothing. And then I found it. A letter, just sitting there on top of everything else. It was addressed to Angela, the name I'd never heard of. My heart stopped. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The fact that it was there, that he had been hiding it, was all I needed to know. Everything inside me screamed betrayal, but what really shook me was the realization that I hadn't been imagining things. The distance, the secrecy, it wasn't just work. It was her. I felt sick. But then something else happened. A voice inside me whispered, "Now you know the truth. What are you going to do about it?"
The moment I saw that letter, I knew my whole world was about to come crashing down. I didn't even open it. There was no need. The weight of it was enough. Tyler was hiding something from me. And not just anything, he was hiding her. That night, when Tyler came home, I was sitting on the couch, my heart pounding. He didn't know I'd found the letter, but I could see it in his eyes. He was on edge, like he knew something was off. I was calm on the outside, but inside, my mind was racing, piecing together everything. The late nights, the hotel receipt, the secretive phone calls, the way he was always just a little too distant. I asked him about the letter. I didn't even say her name at first. I just held it up, the way I imagined a detective would in those crime shows I used to watch. His face went pale. It was like the color drained right out of him. He stammered, tried to play it off, saying it was nothing, that it was a misunderstanding. But I could see it in his eyes. His fear. He wasn't fooling me. Not anymore. "Who is Angela?" I asked, my voice steady, though my insides were screaming. He froze. He couldn't even look at me. The silence between us stretched on, longer than it should have. I could feel my chest tighten, my pulse thudding in my ears. The truth was right in front of me, and he wasn't going to tell me. So I said it. "You're cheating on me, aren't you?" He didn't deny it. He didn't have to. The silence, the way his eyes dropped to the floor, told me everything. The anger that bubbled up inside me wasn't just about the betrayal. It was the realization that the man I loved, the man I had built a life with, had been lying to my face. He wasn't just hiding a little mistake, he was hiding her. He'd been planning this, keeping her secret from me, and all the while I had been blind to it. "Tyler, how could you?" The words came out in a whisper, barely audible, but they felt like they were cutting through the air between us. He didn't answer. He just stood there, his head bowed, as if he couldn't face me. But what he said next, that's what really shattered everything. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was just a business thing. You wouldn't understand. A business thing? My brain couldn't even process it. My husband, the man I trusted, was now telling me that an affair with another woman was somehow part of a business plan? That's when I felt it. The final, undeniable truth. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He had been planning to replace me. All along, while I was in the dark, he had been making arrangements to walk away from our life together. And that's when it hit me. The most gut-wrenching realization of all. The woman he had been seeing wasn't just some fling. She was the one he was building a future with. Angela was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, and I was just a casualty of his plans. and I could feel the tears starting to sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not then. I had to keep it together. I had to think. Is this really how it's going to end, Tyler? Is this it? I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. His eyes flickered, regret flashing for just a second, but then it disappeared. He turned away. I'm sorry, Kate. I never meant for it to get this far. But his words meant nothing to me now, because the truth was clear. This was never about me. This was about his plan all along, his way out of our life together, and his way to take everything for himself. And in that moment, as I sat there, the full weight of what was happening hit me. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for my life. I didn't just have to survive this betrayal. I had to expose it. I had to show the world what he was really capable of. But that night, Tyler didn't just break my heart. He made a mistake that would cost him everything. Because somehow, I was going to fight back.
The days after I found out were a blur. I don't think I fully processed the depth of it all at first. I mean, how could I? 1 minute, everything felt fine. The next, my world was turned upside down, and I was left with a man I didn't recognize. Tyler's confession, if you could even call it that, hung heavy in the air between us. He didn't apologize in the way I expected. There was no begging for forgiveness, no pleading to make it right. It was almost as like he was already mentally checked out of our marriage, as if he had already moved on in his mind. I stayed in that house for a few more days, trying to act like everything was normal, but it wasn't. I'd sit on the couch for hours, staring out the window, watching the sunlight filter through the blinds, and thinking about everything I thought I knew. The house felt cold. I felt cold. The person who had been my everything, my partner, my best friend, was a stranger now. And the worst part, I didn't know who I was anymore. I couldn't look at Tyler without seeing the lies, the secret plans, the years of deceit. I felt like I was suffocating. Every room in the house seemed to be closing in on me. Even the kitchen, where I'd once felt so comfortable making dinner with Tyler, felt foreign. The walls felt like they were closing in. And no matter how much I tried to distract myself, there was always this knot in my stomach. I stopped talking to him, not on purpose. It just happened. What could I say to him? What could we possibly talk about when everything had been a lie? The silence between us stretched on. There was no more pretending, no more small talk or shared looks. I could tell he felt it too. He'd try to start conversations, ask if I was okay, but I could see it in his eyes. He didn't want the answers. He just wanted things to go back to normal, but they couldn't anymore. Not anymore. The house that had once been filled with warmth and laughter was now just a shell. A quiet, oppressive shell. I'd catch myself in the mirror sometimes wondering how I got here. How my life had turned into this painful, empty void. But as much as I hated the silence, as much as I hated the emptiness, a part of me was waking up. A part of me was starting to feel something. Not sadness, not anger, something else, something more dangerous. I started to plan. Not consciously at first, but when you've been betrayed this deeply, you start thinking about the truth. You start thinking about how to expose it. The more I sat in that silence, the more I realized I wasn't just grieving for the man I lost. I was grieving for the life he tried to steal from me. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Tyler had made one huge mistake by underestimating me. He thought I was broken. He thought I was defeated. But in that silence, I found something I hadn't known was there before, my strength. And now I had a mission. I was going to take back what was mine. I can't say when exactly, but one day, while sitting alone in that empty house, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I was tired of crying, tired of staring at the walls, tired of wondering what went wrong. The truth was clear now. Tyler didn't just betray me. He tried to erase me from his life. He had a plan, a strategy, and I was nothing more than a casualty. But it wasn't going to be that easy for him. The silence in the house was no longer just a weight. It became my canvas. As I sat there, something inside me shifted. I had spent so many days thinking I had lost everything: my marriage, my trust, my future. But the truth was, I still had control over my life. I just had to take it back. I started paying attention to everything. Every detail that Tyler thought was insignificant. The way he locked his phone whenever I walked into the room. The papers he kept hidden in his briefcase. The times he mentioned business trips or meetings that seemed to keep him away for days at a time. I didn't need to ask him for answers anymore. I already knew he was lying. And now, I had to find out exactly how deep the lies ran. The first thing I did was dig into the life insurance policy. I knew he'd have it hidden somewhere. He was always so careful with money, always making sure he had the upper hand. One afternoon, after pretending to run errands, I slipped into his office. I'd been there before, but this time, I wasn't just looking for clues. This time, I was hunting for answers. I knew where he kept the paperwork, the safe. It wasn't hard to crack. I'd been watching him, studying his movements, learning his routines. I knew his password, knew exactly where he kept the key. It took only minutes, but those minutes felt like hours. When the safe door finally clicked open, I felt a rush of satisfaction. There it was. His name listed as the beneficiary. I felt sick, but I didn't stop. I dug deeper. That's when I found the signed documents that weren't mine. He'd forged my signature to change the policy. The bile rose in my throat. This was it. This was the evidence I needed. But there was more, much more. Tyler had been careful, but he was sloppy. I found emails with Angela, hotel receipts, and worst of all, bank instructions for a transfer of money I hadn't agreed to. It wasn't just the life insurance he'd been planning to cash in on. He had other accounts, other assets, all of which he intended to hide when he replaced me with her. I didn't know what to feel at that moment. Rage? Disbelief? Or something else? But what I did know was this. Tyler had underestimated me. He thought I was a victim, but I was far from it. I had the power now, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. So I started planning. I had to make sure I didn't just expose him. I had to take everything from him. I couldn't let him walk away with my life, my future, or my dignity. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew I'd have to be careful. But I also knew one thing. I wasn't the helpless wife he thought I was. I was a woman who had just been betrayed in the worst possible way, and I was going to make sure he paid for it. Every step I took from here on out was going to be calculated, precise. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. Tyler thought he had won. He thought he'd gotten away with everything. But I was about to prove him wrong. And when I was done, he wouldn't just be losing me. He'd be losing everything. The moment I gathered all the evidence, I knew the time had come. Tyler thought he was untouchable. He thought I was weak, but I had spent weeks planning, quietly setting my trap. And now I was ready to show him that I wasn't going to sit back and let him destroy everything I had built. The night I chose to confront him, everything felt different. There was a strange calmness in the air, as if the world knew what was about to happen. Tyler had been unusually quiet all day, probably thinking I had accepted his lies, maybe even believing that I would just let it go. But I had learned long ago that appearances were deceiving. I waited until late, after he'd come home from work. He had just finished a long phone call and was pacing around the living room. His back was turned when I walked into the room, but I was holding everything: the forged papers, the emails, the receipts, the bank transfers, the truth.
I set it all down on the coffee table in front of him, the pile of evidence staring back at him. He froze. His eyes widened for a split second, and then the calm facade returned. But I saw it. I saw the panic flicker just beneath the surface. I knew it was all sinking in. "Do you recognize these?" I asked, my voice steady. The silence between us thickened. "What is this, Kate?" he asked, his voice shaking just a little. The man who had once been my everything, the man who had promised me forever, was now stammering in front of me. "This is your plan, Tyler. The one where you replace me with her." I paused, watching his face, studying the guilt that he couldn't hide no matter how hard he tried. "You thought you could walk away with everything, didn't you? My life, my money, my future, all for her. But it's not that easy." His face twisted, a mix of anger and desperation. "You don't understand, Kate. I never wanted this to happen. It was supposed to be—" "Stop." The words cut through him like a knife. "It was supposed to be what? That I'd just disappear and you'd get your happily ever after with Angela? You really thought I wouldn't find out?" He looked away, his jaw clenched, as if he was calculating his next move. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on both of us. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I took back control.
I reached over, grabbing the papers from the table and flipping through them, each page proving more of his lies. "I'm not done yet, Tyler," I said, my voice firm. "I've got every single thing you've done. The insurance policy, the hotel stays, the accounts you tried to hide. You thought you could cover your tracks. You thought I'd never notice." I watched him break. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, the realization that everything he had been planning for months was falling apart in front of him. "I don't want to lose you, Kate. I never meant to hurt you," he said, but his voice was hollow. The words were empty. They didn't even feel like an apology. They felt like a last-ditch effort to save face, but it was too late for that. I shook my head. "It's too late for apologies. You don't get to take everything from me and then expect forgiveness. You're going to pay for what you've done." There was a brief, fleeting moment where he tried to act like he was still in control, but the truth had already been revealed. I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. I had the power now, and I wasn't going to waste it. "Get out, Tyler," I said, my voice cold, final. "You're done." The shock on his face was worth every moment of pain I had endured. As he stood there, speechless, I realized something. He wasn't the only one who had the power to destroy. I had fought for my life, and I wasn't going to let him take another minute of it. Tyler walked out of the house that night, and as I watched him leave, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my own life, my own strength. And now that he was gone, I was ready to take control of everything he had tried to steal from me. But as I sat there, looking at the mess he left behind, I knew it wasn't over yet. The battle had only just begun. The days that followed were strange, quiet. It's funny how you think you'll feel victorious when something like this happens, but the truth is, you're left with more questions than answers. Tyler was gone, but I was still left to pick up the pieces of everything he'd destroyed. Our house felt emptier without him, even though it was the last place I wanted him to be. I spent the next few days going through everything. Documents, phone records, emails. Each discovery was like another punch to the gut. But with every lie I uncovered, I found a bit of myself. I wasn't the woman he had tried to break. I was still here. And that thought kept me going. I had survived, not just the betrayal, but the idea that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worthy of love, of trust, but I was, and I was going to prove it. I didn't just end things with Tyler. I ended the version of myself that let him walk all over me. I ended the quiet, unsure woman I had been for years, and I was building something stronger from the wreckage. The divorce was quick. Tyler didn't fight it. In fact, he signed the papers without much of a fight at all. Maybe he knew it was over. Maybe he'd expected me to roll over. But I wasn't his puppet anymore.
I wasn't the woman who would just let him have his way. When everything was final, I sold the house. I packed up my life, my real life, and left behind the memories of what had been. It wasn't just a fresh start. It was my reclaiming everything I had lost. I moved into a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was breathing again. The weight of the betrayal still lingered, but it no longer had the power to crush me. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, and I knew I would never allow myself to be anyone's second choice again. Tyler tried to reach out once, maybe twice, but I ignored him. He sent me messages, apologizing, asking for another chance, but the truth was, I had already moved on. I had moved on from him, from the lies, from the woman I used to be, and I wasn't going back. I spent the next few months finding out who I was without him. I went on walks, joined a book club, and started spending more time with friends. I traveled when I could, exploring parts of the world I had always dreamed of seeing. Every step I took, every new experience, made me feel more alive than I had in years. But even through all of this, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let what happened with Tyler define me. I was stronger than the betrayal, stronger than the lies. And I was going to make sure that nothing, not him, not the past, could take that away from me. And when I finally looked in the mirror one day, I didn't just see the woman who had been hurt. I saw a woman who had fought back, a woman who had won. It was over. But the truth was, Tyler wasn't the only one who had been holding a secret. There was more to this story than just him. I had uncovered just the tip of the iceberg. And now there was one last thing I had to do. Something that would make everything he'd done come full circle. Something that would give me the final piece of closure I needed. I wasn't done.
I used to think that the worst thing that could happen to me was losing the man I loved. I thought that betrayal would break me in ways I could never recover from. But the truth is, the worst thing wasn't the betrayal. It was the silence, the way I let myself believe I didn't have a voice. I let myself believe that I needed him. But in the end, I realized something crucial. I don't need anyone to complete me. The lesson I learned through this painful journey is that we all have a well of strength inside us that we don't even realize is there until we're tested. The moment I started reclaiming my life, I found parts of myself I never knew existed. I was never weak. I just needed to realize my worth. The real victory wasn't taking everything from Tyler. It was taking back control of my own story. We all go through challenges, moments where we feel lost, but it's what we do in those moments that shapes who we are. And I chose to fight. I chose to walk away from someone who tried to tear me down. I chose to be the person who rises, no matter what. So here I am, standing stronger than before. I've learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how dark the time seems, we are never as powerless as we feel. I found my strength in the darkest moment, and I'll never lose it again. If you've ever felt betrayed or like your world was falling apart, I hope you know you're not alone. There's strength in you, even when you can't see it. If you've learned anything from this story, it's that no matter what happens, you have the power to rise from the ashes. And when you do, nothing will ever hold you back. What do you think? Could you find the strength to fight back like Kate did? Or do you have your own story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And don't forget to subscribe to stay connected. There's more to come and you won't want to miss it. Because sometimes the most unexpected battles bring out the fiercest warriors.